with Skywomen. We talk to women who have fallen victim to various kinds of online scams. And in some instances, these women have not only lost millions financially, but they've also lost their dignity, they've lost their support system. And in many cases, these women have been alienated by their very own families as well. And if you think that you may be immune to getting scammed, you may want to listen to these stories. Our guest today is Julie Hannaford. Don't go away, we'll be right back with her story. And welcome back. This is episode 7 of the conversation Online Safety. I'm your host, Bridgetti Banda. Skywomen is a non-profit formed by Louise Haynes, who researched various kinds of online scams for over 3 years. And one of its key focuses is education and empowerment. We've been sharing stories of women who have been scammed in various ways, and today we talk to Julie Hannaford. So let's welcome her on screen.
Hi,
Jules,
Bridgetti.
welcome. Hi, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's great to be here.
I'm so pleased that you're able to share your story with us. Unfortunately, scamming seems to become a part of everyday life. And unfortunately, most women are shamed into silence and they don't talk about their story. Not only are you going to share your story, but you've also written a book about your story. So tell us, Jules, what happened to you?
So it happened over 8 years ago. It was 2010, and I'd been single for a long time. I come from Australia, but I'm living in Hong Kong. And I was away on a holiday, and I heard about internet dating as a way to perhaps meet somebody. So I was quite excited at the possibility of maybe finding somebody to be my partner because I've been alone for a lot of my life, and I'm a single mother of a daughter as well. So I got online and I met this guy in the UK, and he said he was a contractor and a project manager for a construction firm. And he sent me pictures of him standing next to an Audi and, having lunch and really very, very living a wonderful lifestyle in Manchester in the UK. And we chatted for over a few months. And he would never Skype with me or do any sort of face to face communication, which was my first red flag that I chose to ignore because I believed his excuses that his webcam was broken and, he wasn't able to, he was too busy and things like that. Anyway, I really wanted to meet him because I felt that I didn't want to spend a long time communicating to somebody online because I think you have
Right.
to meet somebody to really know whether you click or not. So I suggested, as a school teacher, I have summer holidays, well, actually, um, winter holidays here in Hong Kong, and I suggested that I would go to the UK to meet up with him. Now, he told me that he was of African descent, that he'd been adopted by parents in the UK, British parents, and that he was actually a troubled teen and he'd been sent off to Canada to boarding school. And that's why he had a strange accent, because I'd questioned him about his accent because it wasn't particularly British. Had a little bit of a British twang, but I've since learned that it was a West African accent that he
So
had.
just Jules, sorry, if you can just back up a second. I
Yeah,
also like the audience to understand what your background is. So you're a school teacher. I just wanted to hone in on that. So you
yeah.
used to working with members of the public, and so your perception skills are generally quite good.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have 2 university degrees. I've been teaching in education for 30 years. I'm a head of year and a middle manager in an international school in Hong Kong. And, I count myself as being quite smart, but I think when it comes to matters of the heart, people can become easily duped because they want to believe what they hear. And one of my main faults was being really naive, I guess, and feeling that because I'm a trusting, generous person, that everybody else would be the same. And so I really wasn't really aware about scamming. I'd never heard of online dating scams. It was 9 years ago. So I just didn't really question what he said to me. And even though there are a few red flags that popped up, like his accent and the fact he wouldn't Skype with me and things like that, and even his story of being adopted, I just chose to ignore them, even though if a friend had been telling me that same story, I would have said to them, hang on a minute, be careful, this doesn't sound right. So I think I'd been alone for so long as a single mother. I'd left my husband when my daughter was 10 months old. So I'd been managing as a single mum for, 12 years at that time, and had been single for all of that time. So I think there was a part of me that so desperately wanted love that I was willing to overlook these niggles and these red flags that were popping up. And I really felt that I wanted to meet this guy to find out what was going on.
I think I see that's been a common denominator, irrespective of your background. It's not just because people kind of assume that this kind of thing happens to the bored housewife that doesn't have a lot of education. That's what people tend to think, or you don't have two brain cells between your head. And I'm trying to emphasize that this can happen to anybody, irrespective of your education level. You can be a highly intelligent person. We've got an interview coming up with a gentleman, for example, who was scammed by a woman. It can happen to anyone, and he's not a stupid person either.
Well, it's
Um,
interesting you say that because I was talking to a couple of forensic psychologists and one who works with the police in Los Angeles when I was researching my podcast, which is a true crime podcast based on my book. And Dr. Shiloh was telling me that she knows lawyers and judges and policemen and members of the community, both male and female, who have been duped online scamming. It's $1 billion industry. And if you look at the statistics from ScamWatch, it's incredible how much money people lose and how big this industry is. So it's really great that I'm writing this book and doing this podcast to help educate others, and that you're doing these conversations as well to help make people more aware that it can happen to anybody. And there's a formula that these people follow. And now that
Jules,
they've got, sorry.
before you get into that, I just want to back up
Mm,
a second there. So, what people don't realize is that this is not just somebody who woke up one day and said, "Hey, there's a vulnerable woman. She's lonely. Let me scam her." This is organized crime. And that is why it is so sad when people tell women, people, not just women, people like yourself, how could you be so stupid? I think what we want to highlight here that this is a form of highly organized crime. These are people who are highly skilled in what they're doing.
absolutely. They're very, very skilled and they've got an answer for everything. And now they've been able to become even better at it because they've got Google Translate and they've got Google to be able to spell check and use Grammarly and things like that. So when they are communicating, they are able to be more convincing with their stories. But there's actually many, many red flags that you can look out for if you know what they are. And I think that's one of the
Can
things
you
that
can you give us some of the red flags that people should be looking out for?
sure, they should be looking out for people who present themselves as in a career that travels a lot, or they even use the term dear, or they have photos where they look like a model, or they have a double barrel name like John Williamson. When they put that on Tinder, that's a sure sign that that is a scammer because most of the real people on Tinder or any of these apps only have one name. They tell you that they've got that somebody's sick or they're divorced or widowed. They have a lot of different stories that they use to make you feel compassion for them and try to get money out of you. They also use a technique called love bombing, which is when they speak to you words of love to you very, very quickly. And if anybody tells you that they love you or that they want to marry you or that you're the woman of their dreams or the man of their dreams very quickly before you've met, that's a sure sign that they're a scammer. They also want to get off the dating sites and get onto WhatsApp or WeChat or something like that quite quickly. So that's another sign. There are so many. And in actual fact, in my book, Fool Me Twice,
I want to
I've
put
got,
you on full screen so you can show your book.
okay, great. So I'll try and get the glare off it, but in my book, Fool Me Twice, which is by Jules Hannaford, the whole last section of this book has a whole bunch of red flags to watch out for, how to online date safely, what to do if you're caught in an emergency. And I even dissect a real email that I got from a scammer over 10 years ago and look at the different techniques that they use. So after my story, there's a whole lot of really good educational material in the back of this book. So this book's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it's been getting amazing reviews. And it actually won a gold award in the Non-Fiction Authors Association in the US just a couple of weeks ago. And it also became a bestseller on Amazon. So I'm really thrilled, and it's getting great reviews.
So one of the viewers are asking, is the book about scams? So can you perhaps just repeat what the book
Yes.
is about?
So this is my memoir, and it's my scamming story. And I was actually caught in a couple of minor scams before this major scam when I went to Manchester, where I ended up losing a few £4,200 to this man, and I also was assaulted when he crushed me between a door and a wall, and I really felt that my life was at risk. So this is about my scam story, and there's more than one, and then there's all the sort of online dating safety techniques at the end. But what I've also done is my daughter and I have turned it into a true crime podcast. Now, this podcast is going to be released on October 25th next month. And it's my story with my daughter narrating the story. And she's got a degree in psychology. So she looks at a lot of stuff like gullibility and why people fall for scams. And I've also got interviews with experts on online dating scams like Roger A. Grimes and Alina Usula, who wrote a book called Love on the Line, and also the forensic psychologist from LA. And also in each episode, I've got an interview with a woman who has been scammed online dating. So I've got South African, Australian, and American women who are contributing their stories to my podcast. And it's a 10-part series, and I'm really, really proud of it. I'm so excited. It's going to be great. So Fool Me Twice is on Apple and Spotify. You can already subscribe, and the first episode will drop on the 25th of October.
Congratulations. That is amazing. Now,
Thank
I
you. I'm
want
so excited.
to, I'm very excited for you too. So my
Yeah.
question is, most people, male or female, find themselves in a corner, silenced out of shame, and they won't talk about their stories because they've been alienated by their families, and in some cases, sadly, a lot of these women, because they've lost everything they own, they end up living in appalling conditions in shelters. What is it that's prompted you? Now, you're a prominent person because you're an educator and you're an educated person. What
Mm.
prompted you to want to come out with your story and not only come out, but write a book and a podcast?
Well,
What led to that?
I have to say it did take me some time to overcome the shame that I felt. I felt very foolish and very ashamed of the choices that I made. And, you know, my parents didn't know about it. My colleagues didn't know about it. I had told my daughter early on, but It really was. In my role as a teacher, I help students, I counsel them. I actually teach personal, social, and health education. I teach about this kind of thing, which made me feel even more foolish because I did something that I warn others not to do. But really, it was actually going to life coaching which helped me, and also looking into Brené Brown. Brené Brown is
Mm.
an amazing woman who does a lot of talk on shame and vulnerability. And
She's amazing.
she's amazing. And I recommend for anybody who has been scammed and is feeling ashamed to look up Brené Brown on YouTube and check out some of her YouTube videos, because she's absolutely inspiring. And she really reminds us that to own our story is the greatest thing that we'll ever do. And to be vulnerable is the way to overcome shame. That shame cannot survive if we share our stories and own our stories. And I did feel very, very anxious when I was writing the book. I was worried about my reputation as a teacher. I was worried about the company that I worked for. I was worried about what my parents would think and my friends that didn't know. But the reaction has been so overwhelmingly positive. I had 100% support from my work and my principal and the company I work for. My parents were 100% supportive. They read the book and they both cried when they read the book, because they felt so sad for me that I've been so alone for so many years, and I'm a good person, and I've just been searching for companionship and love, and I ended up being duped and swindled. But at the same time, they're incredibly proud of me. And my daughter has been amazing. She did the final line edit on the book. She's an editor, and she was wonderful, and now she wrote the podcast based on the book and has narrated it. So, and I feel so empowered now, and the reviews are amazing, and the reaction and the support, and I'm making connections around the world with people who've been scammed, and they're looking to me for support and advice, and I'm more than happy to give it to them. So it's been incredibly rewarding, and ultimately my shame has gone. My shame is absolutely gone, and I feel very empowered. And it really does help to understand that it happens to millions of people from all walks of life around the world.
Jules, your story is incredibly inspiring, and I hope that your story and your journey here will continue to inspire others to come out, and realize that very often, we can feel overcome by shame. And the truth of the matter is that shame resides only in our own minds.
Yes, it
Um,
does.
it resides in our minds, and the minute we speak up and we talk about it, it not only empowers us from within, but somehow it rejuvenates us, and it's a way of actually getting people to rally around us and support us by telling
Absolutely.
our stories in a public space, because it warns other people. The thing that the reason why I felt compelled to want to share stories from various people from different countries, different walks of life, is to help people understand this can happen to anyone. Did you in your wildest dreams think that this would ever happen to you? Because that's what everybody thought. It would not, it cannot happen to me.
No, I really didn't think it would, but I didn't really know much about scamming back in, 8 or 9 years ago. It wasn't as talked about in the media as it is now, and it wasn't as prevalent. But the industry is getting bigger and bigger. And I think that one of the things that I've realized is that by talking about it, I can help others not to get caught in the same trap that I was. And I've already had people contact me saying thank you. After reading the book, they realized they were caught in some sort of scam and they put an end to it. So that's great. If I can help one person, then that's so rewarding.
Absolutely. It's not a little win. It's a huge win to have been able to do what you've done. And I think, as an educator, it's absolutely powerful for you to be able to now share this firsthand with your students, and they will share it with their friends and with their families and
Yes.
people that they know. And I love that you've turned this into a podcast to reach even a bigger um, audience. You know, congratulations for stepping out and doing that and wanting to educate and empower other people um, in the process. The book that you've written, who is your intended audience?
I think anybody who's interested in real life stories, anybody who's interested in being educated about online dating scams and romance scams, anybody who is compassionate about people overcoming adversity. It's a memoir. It's about my life. It's not just the scam story in Manchester. There are other scam stories because I was caught in a couple of smaller scams beforehand. And really, it's I think many women seem to be really interested in my book, but I've had great feedback from some men who have read my book as well. And I do know that some of the older teenagers are reading it, and I know some mothers who want their children to read it as well when they're kind of around the age of 16 or 17. So it really is something that is both entertaining, gripping, and educational.
Where can people find your book, Jules?
So it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and you can buy it online. And it's also in bookstores in Hong Kong, but I guess this is for more a South African audience. So I'd recommend Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon delivers everywhere, so
Yeah.
great place to
Mm.
get the book. And so, you know, if you would like to educate yourself, educate your family, or if you've been scammed and you want to read someone else's story that empowers so that you don't feel so alone, try and get your hands on the book. Is it available in the digital format as well, or is it only
Yes.
hard copy?
Yeah. No, it's on Kindle as well, and that's significantly cheaper than the hardback cover. So yeah, it's available there. And if anybody wants to check out the podcast, they can go to my website, which is www.foolmetwicepod.com, and they
I'm
can
going to
see
put
all
that on
about.
screen
Right.
so people
Thank you
can
so
get that.
much. They can
So
look at
it's
all the information. www.foolmetwicepod.com. And they can
um,
sign up, they can subscribe there, they can read all about the story and me and my daughter's biographies and the experts.
okay.
And yeah, just get a little bit of backstory, and the promo's already out, so they can listen to the promo for the show. But I'm incredibly proud of this. The other thing I just wanted to mention is I really am the demographic for many people who are scammed. A single woman who has a job in my 50s. Well, I was in my 40s when I was scammed, but typically older people are the demographic because we appear to have money, and we are also perceived by the scammers to be more lonely and vulnerable. And can I just point out, in my podcast I was able to get a live interview with a real life scammer from Ghana, a 24-year-old scammer who shared his scamming story with me and the reasons behind why he scams and how he scams. So that was really an amazing coup to be able to get that. I was thrilled to speak to him, and it's very, very interesting. So that's towards the end of my podcast.
Wow, that is
Mm.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I got
Um,
him. I got him by looking for scammers on Tinder. I just liked everybody who looked like they were a scammer until I got one who was willing to speak to me. So that was great. And it's
that,
amazing how many are there.
yeah, I think, you know, and again, I think, you know, we want to sound a warning to women. What would you suggest women do? Because, you know, we all, women are lonely. Like you say, it's usually middle-aged women who've lost a spouse, whether it was by death or divorce. Usually they've got some money, and the common denominator is loneliness, and they pry on the fact that you are lonely and looking for love. What is your recommendation to the women out there who find themselves in that kind of situation? And they are, you know, not all. I mean, I personally know of people who are married now who've met their partners online and they are happily married. So it's not impossible to meet a great person online. What
It's
is
not
your advice
impossible.
to It's not impossible. So what is your advice to people out there who are lonely and they feel that finding someone online is a safe way to do so? What is your advice to them?
First of all, read my book because you'll get a lot of educative tips at the end of it. But I would say make sure you Skype with somebody face to face and that you do it a number of times. Speak to them on the phone, research them and Google them and do all of the investigative work that you can. Meet them as soon as possible. Don't spend months and months or years online with somebody, and look out for the red flags and trust your gut and trust your instinct. Because if I look back, I knew something wasn't right and I chose to ignore it. So I think that it's really vital. And if you do meet someone, make sure you do it in a public place, that somebody knows all of the details of where you're going and who you're meeting, and give them all of their details and their phone number, and maybe even take a friend with you. I wouldn't even recommend necessarily meeting someone for the first time on your own. And if they're a decent person, they'll totally understand you taking a friend. So I think there's many things that you can do, but watch out for the red flags, and don't ever, ever, ever give anybody any money online, ever, no matter what they say or what they promise or what sort of dire tragedy or in need they say they are. Don't do it.
Something I would like to say to women out there as well that are in this position and wanting to find someone, if you met someone online, ask someone else you trust to have a look at your correspondence.
Yes, good idea, to see if
Ask
they
an
can pick up
outside
the red flags.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ask an outside person who is not as emotionally invested as you to look through the conversation, because they will look at it from a different perspective and they will pick up the red flags and back up, because you already will have those internal flags which you now
Mm.
which is now masked by your emotions, but another person looking at it will be able to pick it up and say to you, look, this is a no-go zone. There's too many red flags in here. Don't pursue it. So never do, because that is another one of the modus operandis I've picked up from these scammers, is that they very cleverly will manipulate you into silence. They will manipulate you into not sharing your conversations or talking to other people. They'll keep you so busy that they'll start this conversation of, don't you trust me?
Yeah,
It's one of their big things, so the minute somebody says to you, don't you trust, do you trust me, it's a flag.
absolutely. And they are skilled liars and skilled manipulators. And many of them have been doing this for a long time. And they have a formula that they follow, and
Mm.
they have scripts ready to send to you. So it's like, if somebody's overseas and you don't have any way of meeting them, don't do it. And the other thing I would say, if you're feeling lonely and you're at this time of your life, go out and join a club, join an art class, begin a sport, go and join a theatre group, get involved in your local knitting group or a local book club. Do things where you make connections with other people, and in actual fact, that's a really good way to meet people face to face.
Yeah. Jules, how can people connect with you? Where can people get in touch? How can people get in touch with you?
I suggest they just go to my webpage, foolmetwicepod.com, and I've got a contact form there, and they can email me and contact me through that. And I've got Fool Me Twice JH for Jules Hannaford. That's my webpage and my Instagram, and I'm Jules Hannaford on Twitter.
Fantastic. Jules, thank you so much. You've shared some golden nuggets. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for writing your book and sharing it, and all the best with your podcast. I know you're going to do phenomenally well with your podcast. And it was great, great having you on the show.
Bridgetti, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to hearing from any of the listeners. If they've got any questions or they want to learn anything else from me, please get in touch. I'd really love to hear from you. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll be back again with another episode. So from me, Bridgetti Banda in Cape Town, it's goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.